there's so many ways of being a digital nomad and traveling the world. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. I think it's just first really important to understand what are the top qualities that are important for you on this journey, and also noticing and noting that they will change. But I do believe that if you have this dream and you want to do it, then there is a way that you can find it to work out for you.
All right, welcome everyone. So today we have with us Camie Minerbo, and she is now in Greece. So how are you,
Mm-hmm.
Camie? Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. I am really well here in Greece. It's probably not as warm as in Bali,
It looks like it.
but but it's okay. It's an okay temperature. So yeah, I'm very, very excited.
Awesome. I like how everything is, color coordinated, like your nails and the jacket and the
I have an obsession with like this type of tones.
uh-huh.
So I end up having like a lot of different things that are in these tones, and then for some reason they end up matching even like my
Yeah.
earphones and everything. I love this. I don't know.
So Camille, can you please tell us how did you get started in your digital nomad journey?
So I've been wanting. I remember when I just had graduated college, and this was back in 2017, in the beginning of 2017, and I had just gone out of a 9 to 5 job, and I really like my dream. I remember writing this down like on a piece of paper with the whole like manifestation, law of attraction thing.
Mm-hmm.
My dream was to travel and work at the same time. I wanted the flexibility, I wanted the freedom. I just craved that so much. And I told myself, and I remember that I also told my parents, I'm not ever going back to a 9 to 5 office. Like, I'm gonna work remotely. And this was like before remote jobs were even a thing, like it was 2017. So I don't know, like 6 years ago and 5 years ago, I don't know. And I remember that my dad, he looked at me and he was like, honey, that's an amazing dream that you have there, but it's not gonna happen. Like, no one works and travels at the same time, like working is for working and then traveling is for holidays. There's no such thing as a remote job. You have to find a proper like 9 to 5, blah blah blah. And I don't know, I am a very spiritual person, and I believe a lot in manifestation and law of attraction. I don't know your take on this.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of my story as well, and my experience in my life. But I don't know how I did it. But since that day, I never went back to an office, and all of the jobs that I later on found in the field of marketing and communications, that's what I graduated in, was always remotely. So either it was like a hybrid in which I went to an office once per week or something like that, or it was completely remote. But this was still when I was back in Brazil. So this is not something that I mentioned. I'm actually from Brazil originally. Um, but this always has been on my mind, and I've always dreamed of living this life. So every single decision that I made since that day that I figured that this was something that I wanted to do, and I saw a few people doing it, I was like, I don't know how, but I'm gonna make this work for me. And every single decision that I made since then was towards this goal. And yeah, eventually that led up to a lot of different situations in my life, and a lot of big like dark spaces and rock bottoms, which all, I don't know, kept me going forward and to finally, yeah, live the life that I live now. So this is like a little summary to you. We can go into like more specific things, but yeah.
Awesome. How did you find your first remote job then?
So, one thing that I also have to explain is that when I found my first remote job, which was in an agency, in a production agency in Brazil, I wasn't traveling at that point. So I wasn't like a digital nomad at that point. I would say that that moment for me started more in 20 towards the end of 2019, when I went to Bali, but I'll explain everything. So that remote job I actually found, it was in a production agency. I was recommended by my ex boss. So my former boss had told me about this role, and he was really good friends with the owner of the company. It was like a really, really small company at the time, like a startup. So that was my first one. And then after that, I spent like 8 months in that company, but then I started really getting into spirituality, and I wanted to do more work in that area. So after that, I met the owner of another startup in Brazil that was more related to spirituality and meditation and spiritual workshops, quote unquote. And
Hmm.
then I became really good friends with her, and then she offered me a job, and then I changed from this one to the other. And this company I worked for 2 years in this place, and it was remote from the start because she was a digital nomad herself, so she had
Mm.
traveled all around Australia and everything. And she never wanted the company's culture to be something that you had to stay in the one place. So she had this like as part of the DNA of the company. So we traveled with the company to like Australia and things like that. But I also had the freedom to, like, if I wanted to go to London and visit my friend, I could, and then take my work with me, you know? So I feel like that slowly started to expand my mind into believing that that was really possible for me, you know? So instead of just dropping a 9 to 5 and then instantly going into digital nomad mode, I feel like that grew in me slowly. And then towards the end of 2019, I went to Bali to do my second yoga teacher training. And then from then, a lot of things happened in my life, in my personal life. That was my biggest rock bottom. And I decided from that moment that I didn't want to work for this company anymore, didn't want to go back to Brazil. And so I stayed in Bali for 4 months. Then I went to London. My plan was to do like workaways and things like that. So volunteer in places in for accommodation and food and things like that. Because at that point, I was just living off of my savings and
Mm.
I didn't have any money coming in. I was having actually I had some money coming in because I was doing online yoga classes at that point. So I just really had this mindset that I wanted this to work so badly that I was like, I don't know, I don't care. I'm going to make this work. Even if
Hmm.
I go to a specific place and I work in a cafe for like 3 months and then I move to another place, like, I don't care. I'm going to make this work. This is going to become my reality, you know? Because
Yeah.
I had been wanting this so badly for so long that I had this thing like nothing's gonna stop me anymore. You know, like I don't care if I don't have like money to buy new clothes. That's not this is the life that I want for me. But then when I was in London, like starting like my yoga classes, my I was staying with a friend at that time, like starting my website and everything. It was March of 2020, so everyone
Wow.
knows what happened in March of 2020. COVID hit. I actually got COVID, had to go back to Brazil, and then I stayed in Brazil for 1.5 years until I decided to leave again. And I would say that staying in Brazil after having like this glimpse of freedom was really frustrating for me, because I felt like it had all been taken away, like this one
Mm.
dream that I had failed at it, quote unquote, and which is not the case at all. I just needed some time to reorganize myself. The world wasn't really the same,
Yeah.
and then in 2021, like in September of 2021, I again, still wasn't making as consistent money as I would like at that time. I had already shifted from the whole yoga thing. Then I was doing freelance copywriting. I started out on Fiverr, like charging, I don't know, like 10, $30 per piece of content. And I don't know, from that space, I was like, again, I don't care how this will work. I'll just make it work. I then bought a one-way plane ticket to Portugal. I wasn't even making like a minimum salary in when I went, but I didn't care. Like I was going to make it work. I don't know how. I didn't know how. So I bought this plane ticket, went to stay with my friend in Porto for like 3 weeks, and then from then I just flowed on to my next adventures. I always say, like, I have a podcast as well. It's called The Blossom Experiment, and I talk a lot about intuitive living, which is basically living in accordance to your intuition or your inner guidance. And
Mm-hmm.
throughout the entire year of 2021, I felt like I needed to jump off this cliff, and that's why I did it with so much trust that it would all work itself out. And that's why it worked itself out. And I just kept flowing with this internal guidance, and all of the places that I've been since then has been directed from this space. So then I went to Portugal, then to the UK, then back to Portugal, then to the UK again, and then I came to Greece, and then I've been here since June. And I can say as well that towards like March, April, I'm moving on to somewhere else, which I'm still not 100% sure where it's going to be, but I can feel that this change is coming. So, but it always comes from this inner space inside.
So more like listening to the gut feeling and following that rather than following where the crowds are going.
Exactly.
Mm,
Exactly.
love that. I want to ask about this before I forgot, because you mentioned about your dad said, honey, that's not going to work. Nobody does that.
Yeah.
Huh, right? Because I guess when we want to start something new, it helps more when the people that you love support you in that, right? So how did you deal with that challenge? I think that does makes it harder. How
Yeah,
did you
that's
deal
a
with that?
great question because for a long time I felt like he was right, you know, especially when it comes from your parents, which are people that you tend to put on a pedestal and you think that their way of living is the right one. And
Mm,
my dad is very different from me, so he's a very like logical person, you know, let's budget, let's do all of the logical and rational things, while I am a way more emotional person, like let's see
mm.
where it flows. Like my dad would never say something like that, you know. um so it was really challenging, and I felt like I was failing at life at that point because I had a dream that was so different, a dream to live in a way that it was so different from the way that he believed that I should live, right? Because I
Yeah.
felt like either if I wasn't that corporate person who he imagined myself to become, then I would be failing him. And it took a lot of inner work to detach myself from his perception of my success and my perception of my success. And I would not say that I am there 100%.
Mm,
I did a work that to the point that allowed me to detach myself to the point that it got me to where I am now. But there are still moments in which I feel like my life is not showing the success that I should be feeling, if that makes sense. Like I feel like I am successful in what I once dreamed for me, and I got
mhm,
it, and I'm so proud of myself for having the courage to take the necessary actions without anyone supporting me. Like some people were supporting me, but some people were like, yeah, sure, honey, like go. But okay, like just supporting from afar. And other people were outspokenly saying, like, yeah, this is not gonna work, you know?
yeah.
I'll see you in like 2 months. So when you come back with zero money and with a lot of fear, you know?
Mm,
Um So yeah, I think it was just this internal work of building this confidence and this safeness within yourself, knowing that you are enough and that your dreams matter, and that even though people don't support you, you can support yourself, and you
Mm,
can believe in yourself. And also knowing that people, they're I know that my dad is very proud of me, and I know that he's proud of me in a way that maybe he never imagined that that would be the case. And I know that if he wasn't supporting me in that way, like he did support me in another way, like, but I know that his questionings about what I was doing, how I thought I wanted to live, and things like that, wasn't because he didn't love me or something like that. It had to do more with his own belief
yeah.
system, so once I detached also from taking it personally and seeing that as like a pointing finger to me and saying your way is wrong, it's more to what he has believed and how he was taught that life is supposed to be,
Mm,
so yeah, I think all of those like little inner works really were actually essential for me to be able to support myself and be this pillar for myself, when especially when you're alone, because I didn't live with like my boyfriend or something, or like a friend. I left as a solo woman, traveling by myself and meeting people along the way. And whenever I decided to change cities, I again was changing cities by myself, not knowing who I was going to meet at that
mm,
point, if I was going to meet people or whatever, So it takes a lot of courage and a lot of emotional intelligence to do what I did. And that's why I keep telling myself that I'm proud of myself, even though there are things that I would like to change in my reality as everyone, and if he doesn't see that, which I think he does, but if he doesn't, it's okay, because I see that, and that's the most important thing.
mm. That's beautiful. So it's a matter of being okay with what you want and wanting what you want, and also being okay with people not understanding it, I guess.
Exactly.
Right. And the most important thing is that you said you see you. That's all that
Exactly.
matters. So, how do you do? You mentioned also loneliness. I think that's one of the thing that a lot of people mention, uh, as the biggest challenge working online, as be it as a remote worker or digital nomad. How do you deal with that?
So it's really interesting because I would say that if you put together like the past 1 year and a half straight plus the 4 years, 4 months, sorry, before that, in Bali and things like that, I would put together like 2 years of doing this type of life. I've never, I, and I can't say this for everyone. That's why I like to really like really reinforce the fact that it's like an intuitive thing, because I feel like in everyone's journeys, they will go through their own things that they need to go through, their own challenges that they need to expand and learn things on. So, personally, the way that everything ended up working out in this past 2 years,
Mm,
I've never been alone. So I've always met people through courses, through digital nomads meetup. So this is a huge tip that I can talk about as well. um or for some reason, like I went to a city and then a person that I met like in Brazil or somewhere else in the world was also in that city, like coincidentally, synchronistically at that same time, and that person presented me to other people, so it's really interesting how for me loneliness was never an issue, because it was never a story that I told myself. For me, the
mm,
biggest and when I left Brazil and I bought my one-way plane ticket to Portugal, I was never like, oh my god, how am I going to make friends? I was so worried about how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to make this work financially, that I didn't even think of I didn't even think of like, oh yes, I have to make friends along the way.
Yeah.
There's a possibility that I'll be alone somewhere, So and it's really interesting because my sister, she left Brazil in September of last year, so 1 year after me. And her biggest issue, because she's an introvert, so her biggest fear was always, how did you make friends, how am I going to make friends, and blah blah blah. So
Mm.
her story was very like tied to that. My story was always tied to, how am I going to make myself financially stable,
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. But I would say that, like, my top tip for people whenever they are like, I want to travel, how do you meet people and everything like that, is to go on Facebook groups, on like digital, like just go on Facebook and type digital nomads, the city that you're thinking about. So digital nomads Crete, digital or Hanya, digital nomads Portugal, digital nomads Bali. And from that space, normally what people tend to do is that they organize meetups and like weekly meetups, because there are a bunch of people that are also in this lifestyle. So if you are afraid of feeling lonely, know that there's another person that is afraid of feeling lonely, and another person, and another person. And you can always become friends with those people, and meet those people. So you're never alone in this boat, and there are other people who are feeling the same. And I feel like what I find is that normally digital nomads, they are very open to meeting other people, exactly because they know the feeling of feeling alone, feeling outside of their home country, feeling not at home in any place in the world. Because once you start traveling, it's really hard to have the sensation of like, oh, I'm going back home, like to the place that you were born in. But is that really home? You don't feel at home in that place anymore, because you've seen so much. um and then you have multiple homes in a big home that is planet Earth, and you meet a lot of new people, and everyone is really open to everyone,
Yeah.
because you need people. So yeah, I feel like that's a big reason why I haven't felt alone. I feel like for sure I have had to get out of my comfort zone a lot to go to those meetups, be really open to meet people. But that's one of the big reasons why I started traveling in the first place, is to meet people and know different cultures, understand different backgrounds, why people are the way that they are. And like, human beings just really interest me in general. So yeah.
Yeah. And what do you do now? Is your main thing to make money online?
So now I currently work with social media management, content creation, content strategy, so things like that.
Yeah.
And then I have like different clients that I work for. And I also I have been feeling really stuck in that area as well. So I want to evolve from that and start creating more content in regards to other areas. So yeah, I'm just seeing where that leads me, and being trying to get really creative with things, and trying to get back to that version of myself that is like, I don't care, I'm gonna make this work. Because I've been feeling really sorry for myself, and I'm just trying to get back to that like version of me who is like blood in her eyes, like really fighter. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like since the beginning, that's one thing that you keep repeating. I don't care, I'm going to make it work, right? And that's how you are as a person, because I don't think that works for everybody as well. Like you mentioned, like everyone is different. Some people maybe need more planning and stuff like that. And what's your tip for people looking into, you know, living the digital nomad lifestyle? Like I saw recently, actually, somebody said, guys, I want to start traveling, but what job do I need to do out there?
Yeah,
What tip do you have as someone who has the mindset of, I don't care, I will just make it work?
I would say that I think the first things that this person could pin down is what are the characteristic and the elements of this type of lifestyle that are important for you and that you really crave. So for example, if it's the freedom, the flexibility on schedule, the meeting new people, going on adventures, like what is it that it is, so you can and so that's the first like part of the thing, like what is it that is important for you. And for some people, for example, as you said about the planning, the stability is really important. So some people would be like, you were crazy to leave, like to just buy a plane ticket and go. I would never would want to do that. That was a line for me and my own intuition. And I'm sure that for some other people, I would never go out preaching that. Would
Yeah.
never say like, guys, just go and buy a plane ticket, whatever. Like, what is the freaking deal? Like, would never do that in my life because people are so different. But I do believe that if you have this dream and you want to do it, then there is a way that you can find it to work out for you. So that's something that's very important. But then if stability, for example, is something that is important for you, it's like, okay, it's like on the top, flexibility, stability, and freedom. I don't know what freedom is for you. What does it mean? Does it mean that you want to stay 1 month in each place, or do you want to stay 1 year in each place? So it's like, so I feel like when people are like, I want to travel the world, there's so many ways of being a digital nomad and traveling the world. There are people that go to a place, they find a stable job, and they're there for 2 years, and then they quit the job, and then they go somewhere else and find another job, and then they're there for 2 3 years, whatever. Or there are some people who go to one place, stay for 1 month, and then they go to another place 1 month, blah blah blah. And and there's no right or wrong way of doing it. I think it's just first really important to understand what are the top qualities that are important for you on this journey, and also noticing and noting that they will change. So for me, in the start, 1.5 years ago, stability was not important for me. I didn't care about it. After a few months of jumping around, sleeping everywhere, and kind of like getting to a point of, on Friday I didn't know where I was going to sleep on Sunday, I was like, you know what, this is not fun. I don't like this anymore. This is not fun for me. I want to have a little bit of stability. So I started looking into going to places for longer than 3 months, because people think that 1 month is like a lot. It's not. It goes by really quickly. Even 3 months, like you put your stuff in a place, 3 months later you feel like you had just, or like, I've just organized this home yesterday. How the freaking god is it already 3 months has passed? So and now one thing that I want to do, for example, I want to leave Greece in 2 months, 3 months, and I want to be in my next place for at least 1 year, because I'd rather sublet that place and then travel for 1 month to, I don't know, Cape Town, and then come back. But knowing that I have this place to call it a home, to have all of my stuff, knowing that I can go back to a place or something like that, because that hasn't been working for me anymore. So those things, they change. The elements that you want, they change. But I think that before you leave, I think it's important to understand a little bit of what is your top priorities. And then after that, it's another internal work of what is it that I love to do, and what are my skills, what would be my dream role and my dream job, and what do I need to do to get there. So for example, I have a vision for what I want, and right now the things that I'm doing is I'm gathering a bunch of little different skills to get to the point that where I want to go. So it's before trying to fit yourself into one specific job and not thinking about how that will make you happy, if that's going to fulfill you. Just because you are living in Costa Rica, but you have a really, really, really toxic job, that's not going to make you more happy than if you live in your own city and have like a very fulfilling job. So I feel like people also have this misconception of the moment that I start traveling, everything is going to be like miraculous and, amazing because I'll be working with a beach in front of me. Yes, but you will still have your laptop in front of you and a bunch of toxic people to deal with. So don't like play your mind thinking that this will solve everything, because it's also important to find a a role that will fulfill you in some way, because otherwise you will start doing it 3 months later, you will feel unfulfilled, you will be just fed up with everything. So also honing into what are the things that bring me joy, what do I love doing, and then what are my skills and what I can bring to people, what can I bring to companies, and then you know starting to look. There are multiple websites that you can do that. And yeah, I'd say that I feel like this process is really, really important, like this inner excavation.
Hmm. You certainly give so many, I think, important tips that people probably often don't think of when they're just starting out. So you maybe even would be able to teach people to do it as a profession on its own.
Well,
um
I would never. It's so I don't recognize that. It's really interesting that you say that, and I
yeah,
feel like this is a great thing to talk about with people, because people rarely recognize the skills that they have.
yeah,
So
because
that's really important for your listeners as well.
yeah, because you were mentioning about oh, you were collecting your skills that you have, right? And then you like really give the tip in a structure, I guess, based on your experience. And what's most interesting to me is when you mentioned that the needs changes as you go by, like because you mentioned about I don't care, I would just book the ticket, and I don't care, I will make it work, right? And then you just go, and then after a while you realize that, oh, actually stability now is important for me, which wasn't then. And you also say that you want to go back to your, I want to make it work, I'm going to make it work mindset as well. So it's kind of aligned with, okay, you need stability, so I think that's kind of holds you back from I don't care, I'm going to make it work kind of thing, right? So that's very interesting as well. Like it probably challenges that people will not be able to see until they jump into the lifestyles, if that makes sense, which is why I think it's important for people to hear personally the experience from people that are actually living the lifestyle, and it's not just about working on a hammock in a beach somewhere.
Yes. Or like on a camper van, which is so overly glamorized as well. Like, you know how annoying it is to be in like a small space your entire day because you don't have an office to go, and then having to pee and shower and cook and sleep in like, I don't know, 10 meters. Like, yeah, social media has really overly glamorized these things, like a beautiful life, but it's not magical.
Yeah, and again, depends on who you are as a person, I guess, right? And back to the needs.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe when you live in a camper van, it is more important for you to see places rather than to be in a more comfortable. And then maybe after doing that for a year, you go like, oh, I've had enough. I need somewhere to live that is proper
Mm-hmm.
bathroom and stuff. And that's fine too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even you are still also trying to, you know, figuring out with all the changes. So that's very
Exactly.
interesting. And yeah, so what's next? What's next for you?
So curiously, which is another interesting thing. I feel like talking about like relationships while being a digital nomad, because normally when you are a digital nomad, you kind of go to a place, stay for a while, then leave. You know, it's very transitory.
Mm.
So how are you going to build a relationship in the first place when everything is so transitory? But again, I don't know. That's not something that I was like when I started it, because I was in a relationship for 6 years. Then I broke up with my ex in 2019. And then I was like, I don't care about having like a partner now or something like that. My main, again, my main focus was like, I want to make enough money to live comfortably, have my own place, and be able to buy plane tickets when I want to travel, and change places and have this freedom. So eventually I met someone in the towards the end of last year, and we started dating, and it was really intense and really quickly. And now I have a boyfriend, which I always laugh when I say, because it was so quick that okay, we've been together for 5 months almost. It's not that long at all. But yeah, so now what we're thinking about is going. We both want to leave Crete. I feel like I've outgrown this island a little bit. It was beautiful for the amount of time that it lasted, but I feel like I just need to be somewhere a bit bigger with more stuff. I don't know. Anyway, so he also has been feeling the same, and so now we're starting to think of maybe going to the south of France, possibly renting an apartment together, which again for some people it's like, oh my god, you're crazy, it's like just 5 months into a relationship. And yes, I agree, and it might work out and it might not. But another thing that I told my dad, I love how he makes like random appearances. My dad is an amazing person, okay? It's just that we are really different. But he said, like, how are you gonna move in with someone you've been together for 5 months, you barely know the guy, you know? And I told him, Dad, how do you expect me to have a relationship in this type of life that I have? Either I tell myself, okay, I have to stay here just to see how this relationship will go and force
Mm.
myself to stay in a place that I'm not happy and fulfilled by anymore, or I try this, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, because that's how relationships work. Like that, either they don't or they do. But if I move in with someone, it doesn't, if it doesn't work, it's just not gonna work faster, than if I was like just 1 year dating or whatever. And I feel like it's really interesting to, when you're talking to people that don't live this type of lifestyle, they're not digital nomads, they're like, oh my god, you're moving so fast. It's like, yes, for your lifestyle, but my lifestyle is not that. So you
Mm.
can't compare my lifestyle and my decisions to yours, and as much as I can't compare your lifestyle and your decisions to mine. But it's important to know that, at some point as a digital nomad, you will have to make decisions, in ways that other people don't, and in ways that other people won't understand.
Yeah.
And then you have to again self-soothe yourself and self-support yourself in those ways, because people might not understand what you're doing all the time. And as long as you are aligned with what decision you are making, and you are confident that that's the right decision in this moment, that's okay. Because I know that there's also a possibility that I'm going to make this decision, and in 5 months we won't be living together anymore, we'll have to sublet the place or whatever. But I won't regret it, because in this moment that's what makes sense for me, and I know that it will lead to whatever other type of decision I need to make as well. And it yeah, I think that I'm saying this in relationships because I feel like maybe a lot of single people are like, how am I going to meet someone, how am I going to meet my life partner or something like that. So it's also knowing that this is possible. Like, I met someone, he has a similar lifestyle as well, he works for a company in France, but he is able to work remotely, so we're both able to, live wherever. He has lived in Vietnam, he has lived in the Philippines. So we both are very like, we need to travel, we need to change places. um so yeah, I think it's also again another layer that is different to what society does in the normal way, that we have to do it in a different way as well. So everything becomes really different, and it's part of the game, you know. But if it is something that you really dream of doing, and even if it's for 1 month, 2 months, or 20 years, then go for it. You know, it's part of the experience of being human, and nothing has to be forever, nothing is forever.
Mm.
And yeah, if it's something that your intuition is calling you to do, and you know that it's authentic to you, then I don't know, I would always encourage everyone to do it in their own ways, but do it to see how it is, you know.
Mm. So it's all about embracing the journey itself and being okay
Exactly.
with people not understanding what it's like as long as you do, I guess is
Exactly.
what you're saying, right? So, how frequent do you move around?
Well, it depends a lot. Like normally in the beginning, I think it was more like 3 months, 3 months, 4 months. And then when I got to Crete in June, I was like, okay, I'm gonna still stay until October. Then I had a bunch of plans to go to South Africa in October, and then somewhere else where I don't remember. I know, yeah, I was gonna stay like for 3 months in South Africa and everything. And then possibly go to Brazil, visit my family. But then I met this person, and then I was like, you know what, I don't want to move around because I want to see how where this goes.
Yeah.
And at that point, I felt like I wasn't ready to leave Crete. So again, like the decisions that I make about how long I'm staying in a place or where I'm going are not really rational, quote unquote. They're like maybe a little bit in regards to, okay, I'm try to go somewhere that is warm, you know, maybe
Mm.
that's like the rational part. But I feel like the amount of time that I stay is very connected to, I feel like I've overgrown this place. I've outgrown this place. I'm moving somewhere else. I feel like I still need to be grounded in this place. So I'm staying longer. And then it's really interesting for me. I've always, whenever I need to stay for longer in a place, an accommodation always pops up like really easily. If I'm not supposed to be in that place, the
Yeah.
universe just doesn't open any door, you know? So with friends right now, I told my boyfriend, like, okay, let's knock on the door and see if it opens. I'm not going to force the door to open. If it's not supposed for me to be there, I'm not going. Like, I don't care. I trust that somewhere else better will show itself. And if we're meant to, it's going to open really easy. It doesn't mean that we're not going to take action, that we're not going to put effort and look into places. It's not what it means. It means that I'm not going to, like, you know, force myself into this concept of idea that I have of the perfect life. Because that's
Mm.
also something that I found is like sometimes the idea, the life that you think that you want to live and it's the perfect life for you, if it's coming from this mind place, this mental place, this place of external validation of everyone around me is doing it or whatever, it will rarely fulfill you.
Mm.
Rarely, because it you will get what you want, the life that you think that you want, and then it will stay there for like 1 month, and then you'll be like, okay, this sucks, you know. And
Mm.
then if you do it from a place and you allow this place of internal decisions to come, it will lead you to a place that sometimes is unexpected, but it was exactly what you needed and that you need in this present moment, you know. So yes, maybe like I remember when I left Brazil, I had this one city in Portugal in mind, which is called Ericeira. It's like a surfer's town. There's a lot of yoga, very hippie, blah blah blah, close to Lisbon. And I was like, this is the place I'm going to live for the next 1 year of my life. And I was like obsessed with the place. No, no, no. Never even got to the place. I visited once for like 2 hours. I was like, meh, whatever. And then I ended up living in the Algarve in Lagos, like down in the south of Portugal. Never, just from by chance, and ended up meeting like a bunch of wonderful people, and it was the exactly right place for me to be in at the time. So really detaching yourself from what it has to look like and allow it to be like whatever it needs to from this place of, I don't know, like detachment and surrender and just going with the flow, So that's why I tend not to be like very attached to one specific place and whatever. I just want to go wherever because maybe you don't even know the name of the city that it's perfect for you.
Mm,
And the world is a big place as well. So
yeah.
yeah.
So you're very flexible in that sense, I guess, because you go with the flow more. I like the idea of trying to knock the door and see if it all opens. I think
Yeah.
it's a really great analogy in terms of, be it even just trying to be or live the digital nomad lifestyle, right? Because sometimes maybe you want to do it because you think that's going to be better, but maybe what you really need is a holiday from your work. We don't know. So
Yes.
so
Exactly.
yeah, like you said, some people do like to have a home base, and like your friend said, your sister would like to be with people and have friends and have more stability and stuff like that, and that's fine too. So yeah, like you that you bring that up as well. And think I think you really give great advice.
Thank you.
I'm sure it will be very useful for people that are listening and trying to figure things out, getting into, or even just trying to knock the door, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, oh, talk to us more about your Blossom experience.
Okay, yeah. So I started this podcast in 2020, in August of 2020. And it was all about, so I named it the Blossom Experiment because the way that I see the world is like a lotus flower, like you blossom from your mud, from your shadow, and then you grow from those hardships and those challenges in life. And it's a continuous blossoming experiment, like life. The human experience is this experiment of experimenting with life and seeing what happens, and then growing and blossoming and evolving and transforming from that point. So that's why I named it like that. And then from that point, it was always like a more spiritual podcast, quote unquote. I had some interviews. The majority of them are just solo episodes of me, like telling stories of how I deal with my life. And then when I started traveling, I talked a lot about like intuitive travel, how to know it's your intuition versus ego, how to live intuitively, how to have intuitive relationships, like everything through intuition, through soul, quote unquote. And then I paused it in May of 2022. Oh my God, I forgot what year was last year of 2022. So I paused it there.
The last 2 years
And
didn't happen.
yeah, it's crazy. Like it's such a mesh. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I paused. Oh my God, wait just a second. Because, sorry. Can you? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear
Something
you.
happened to my. Okay. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, so I paused it on 2022, and then because I last year was just, I don't know, I felt a little bit disconnected from my message. And then now I'm returning with it. So I just recorded a podcast. You also having me here is inspiring me to pick it back up. I love podcasting. I love helping people and, with my stories or whatever. So yes, and now I really want to talk about this more like intuitive way of living, but in a more grounded way, which I'm calling like authentic living. I don't know still what it is, but it's just this idea that whatever works for me doesn't mean that it will work for you. And I
Mm.
just want to help people tap into that inner guidance inside of themselves so they can make the decision from this place and also have permission slip to live life in their way, in the way that they know it's best for them. Because we
Mm.
hear so many people saying, you should do this, to become a digital nomad, go through these 5 steps. I could create a course saying, jump off of a cliff, go stay with your friend, go on Fiverr. Like I could
Yeah.
name the steps that it took me, but it doesn't mean that's going to work for you. And I don't think it will. Maybe it will
Yeah.
work for 3 more people, but ultimately it will work if you go down to your gut, to your authenticity, to your needs, your core wants, blah, blah, blah. And then from that space, understanding what is the next aligned step for you. So it's kind of a podcast to help you go inwards and also make decisions that are authentic for you, and also just have a permission slip to live in the way that you want to live, and not have anyone else telling you this is wrong, you shouldn't be doing this, blah, 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 because that's what I felt like I had sometimes in my life, and I
Mm.
didn't like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So if you guys want to hear more about Camille's Blossom experiment, check out her podcast. She'll be posting
Yes.
more, right? And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
the last question that I ask everyone is what is the definition of home to you?
Well, that's a deep question,
Mm.
and something that in the beginning of my travels I struggled with a lot. I feel like a lot of people say that home is where you are or where your heart is, whatever. And although that's true, for me, I personally try to find home within myself, but not in this like spiritual way, but in ways that ground me into who I am. So, for
Mm.
example, every time that I listen to a podcast in the morning and I'm doing like my morning routine, I feel like myself and I feel at home no matter where I am. Every time that I go on my mat and I do some exercise, workout, yoga, whatever, Pilates, I feel like home within myself no matter where I am. Every time that I
Mm.
go for a walk and I have my podcast on and I'm listening to music, I come back to myself and I feel at home. Um, so like, and anytime that I'm watching like my favorite series, I feel like I'm at home. So like it's small things that ground me back into who I am, and things that I love doing and are part of who I am, literally, that I can take wherever. So I feel like there are a lot of times, especially for example, like now in December to January, I was traveling for 1 month, and I love traveling. Of course, I live this life, but at sometimes it can get really taxing. It can get really frustrating. You can feel like you lost yourself in everything that's going on. In visiting a new city, you have to run around, see people, see friends, see family, blah, 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 and you just lose the sense of who you are. And whenever I take time in my day, in various moments of my day, to ground myself back into who I am and the things that I love doing, I feel like I'm more myself. I remember who I am. And I feel like when you are living outside of your home country, you don't have your family, you don't have your childhood friends, you don't have anyone on the external to ground you back into who you are. So you can
Mm.
literally, if I literally go to another city tomorrow and I say, "Hi, my name is Georgia. I'm technician, like I'm a beauty artist." No one's gonna say no, you're not. They're gonna say, "Ah, hi Georgia. I have 3 kids. Oh wow, yeah, I was married." Like I can make up any story about who I am, and if I'm crazy enough, I can start believing in it. I don't have
Totally.
anything on the external to ground myself into who I am. So I
Mm.
feel like for me, home is having those small things that you do on the physical, even if it's like a meditation, but it's like that you're physically doing with your body, listening, meditating, whatever, that bring you back into who you are. And then I feel at home wherever I am, because I feel safe in myself. I feel like I'm taking care of myself. I feel like no matter what happens, if shit hits the fan, I know that I'm there for myself, because I feel connected to my body, to my inner self, whatever. So weird way maybe of explaining home, but I feel like I've thought about that a lot. I even have an episode on my podcast about like home and things like that, because that used to be a struggle for me. And yeah, I feel like that's what I found so far.
Hmm. I've never, I like where you describe about the feeling like yourself, like to ground yourself, but on a more, what do you say, like physical level than on a
Hmm.
mental level. Like you said, I can just go somewhere and tell people about, totally different name, different identity. And if you're crazy enough that you start to believe it. I've never heard that before. I think that's also important. I guess depends on whether or not you love who you were or you are back then, or if you wanted to completely change your
Hmm.
identity, I
Yeah.
guess, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for mentioning that. It surely, yeah, you, like you say, you have thought of it a lot. I think that's, you deliver that as well. So thank you so much for all the amazing tips and a lot of wisdom as well. Where can people find you when they want to connect with you online?
So my Instagram is at Camie.minerbo. So CAMI.MINERBO. I also have the Instagram for my business, but I haven't been posting on that. So go follow me on my
Okay.
on the this one. And then of course, if you want to listen to my podcast, it's in on like Spotify, Apple, iTunes and everything. It's the Blossom Experiment. And yeah, but I would love to, if anyone has any questions for me or something like that. I just overall love connecting to people and also helping. So feel free to message me there. I want to thank you so much for this opportunity. I've never talked about my experience with being a digital nomad before, like in this way. And it was really nice to have a space to reflect on everything, that happened in the past years. So it was very beautiful for me too. So I'm really, really grateful for this. Thank you a lot,
Thank you.
honestly.
Thank you for sharing.